Hi, I'm Tiana Shoei. I'm a writer, entrepreneur, leader, and energy. This is my podcast, Ain't Quite Right. Join me as we laugh, learn, and live big. Hey everyone, this is Tiana. I am going to throw a quick note in at the beginning of this episode because seriously, 2 hours after I got done recording this, my sister sent me a text with a tool that is a perfect companion to what I talked about in this episode. So rather than re-record an hour-long episode, I know, I'm so lazy. I'm being sarcastic, of course. I just wanted to take a minute and put a quick note at the beginning of this episode. So the topic of this episode is gratitude, and I suggest a gratitude practice at the very end. I personally use a handwritten journal, but this tool that my sister sent me is an app that you can download on your iPhone. They probably have an Android version too as well. I'm not sure, but they probably do. And the app is called 5 Minutes of Gratitude, a daily gratitude journal. So if you want to practice the gratitude, which again, I cannot recommend enough, taking the time to write down things you're grateful for every day. And that's what the whole podcast is about. So I won't get into that here. But if you want to do that in a digital format rather than a paper format, I still suggest paper. I think there's something powerful about putting pen to paper. But if you're more of a digital person, the 5 Minutes of Gratitude, a daily gratitude journal is a great tool. I'm going to put the link and all the information you need to access this app in the show notes. So it should be right there. If you check it, if you access this on Apple, it should be on the show notes. Spotify, same thing. Or you can go to my website, tianashoei.com/podcast, and you'll see all the information for the app in the podcast as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. Just had to put this quick note at the beginning of the episode. Hope you enjoy, and we'll catch you next time. Hello, everyone. This is Tiana Shoei, and welcome to my podcast, Tiana Shoei Ain't Quite Right. Thank you guys for tuning in. I do start off each podcast by saying that, but I just genuinely want to check in for a minute and say thank you, legitimately, genuinely thank you. And I'll tell you why. The whole journey of creating a podcast it's an interesting journey. And I mean that in the best possible way, right? It's a learning process. I had to learn about things like how to make intro and outros and how to edit audio and how to produce and upload and all of those things, what equipment to buy, what content people actually want to listen to, all of those fun things. But it's also a lot of vulnerability. I'm putting myself out there for the world. And there are 2 common human fears that hold us back. And if you're one of my coaching clients, you'll hear me kind of kick you in the butt if I find you articulating these, which is the fear of being judged and the fear of being rejected. That is a real fear. Those are real fears that humans deal with. And so by recording a podcast, I'm putting myself out there. And I'm sure that many people have rejected and judged me. And you know what? I've come to the place in my life, if you've ever listened to any of my podcasts, where you know that I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But it's also an interesting journey because, well, first of all, it allows me to continue to be in content creation mode, which I love. It stretches me. And it also, I'm trying to figure out how the best way is to say this. It also helps continue to inspire me to keep pushing through. So I appreciate that. But one of the things that's been really rewarding, I will say, about this whole process is the feedback I get from you guys. For those of you that have taken a minute to send me a note or make a comment on something on social media, I can't tell you how much that means to me, because at the end of the day, I do this for a lot of different reasons, but not probably for the reasons you think. So I was forced to kind of rethink this earlier this week, and I'll tell you this story. I use a lot of different social media platforms to let people know that, hey, if you have some free time, I'm talking on the other side of a microphone. And one of the platforms that I use is LinkedIn. And I get 5 to 7 solicitations a week on LinkedIn. And usually 5 to 7 of those solicitations do not pertain to what I do at all. They're mostly focused around insurance sales, and I don't sell insurance. I do work in the insurance industry, but I don't sell insurance, which I think is funny. Like, we can get you more customers. really, for what business? So oftentimes I just ignore most of the solicitations I get on LinkedIn because of they are really not relevant or applicable to me. And then the few times when I've taken the time to say, hey, this doesn't apply to me, I never get anything back. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm just going to keep ignoring you. But earlier this week, I got an advertisement from somebody who was like, hey, we can help you make more money from your podcast and make it more famous. We can advertise and teach you how to market it. And I was kind of sitting there thinking about, okay, what is my response on this going to be? So I had to ask myself the question, like, what is my intention for the podcast? What are my goals for the podcast? And these are things I ask myself in general. And I have at different points in time sat down and said, okay, these are my goals. But as I've gone through this process, as I've matured, as I've learned, I realized that some of the goals that I had, and by the way, this is an okay process to do as human beings, is revise our goals, because we get into either connection with the deeper why, or we realize that our goal wasn't what we thought it was going to be. This is actually one of my favorite parts about coaching, is that I constantly, start off with people who are like, this is what I want. And then when we peel back the onion, we realize it's not really what they want. They've thought that that's what they want. And so the same thing happened for this podcast. I had all these ambitious goals, and then I realized that those weren't really my true goals, that those were great superficial goals to put out there, because I saw other people like, I want to be the Joe Rogan of podcasting, because I saw Joe Rogan. But what I've come to realize is that I don't want to be the Joe Rogan of podcasting. I want to be Tiana Shoei. Whatever that looks like for me, right? And that means showing up and as the best version of myself and creating the best content that I can create in that moment in time. But really my intention for this, as I think about what caused me to want to start this podcast, and this conversation with this particular person marketing to me their podcast enhancement services, I thought about it and I said, I'm not doing this to make money. I actually pay for this out of my own pocket. And it's something I'm happy to do. I volunteer my time for this. I could monetize this podcast easily. I have enough listeners now, thank you, that I could go on and have advertisements. And there may come a day and time when I decide I want to at least break even on this. But that's not the reason why I do it. And as I thought about this gentleman's kind offer, I realized I don't want to turn this into a job. This is a joy of mine. And the reason that I do this, and the reason that it is such a joy of mine, is because I remember not that long ago what it was like when I was first starting this journey. I was well educated in the way things should be, right? I could tell you how much money you need to save to have your 401k, and what age you should retire, and what kind of career track you should take if you want to become, this level or that, have that job. And I could tell you how to make sure you paid your house off in 10 years. And that's not a bad thing, by the way. I'm just saying, I knew the white picket fence track like all the rest of you do. You can all tell me this. Oh, well, I've got to get this kind of job, and I got to save this much money, and I got to put it in my 401k, and I've got to invest it in the stock market. And while none of those things are instinctually bad or innately bad, they're not the only way. And I remember when I realized that I had such a myopic view of how the world works, and such a myopic view of my self-worth and the way that I had to live my life in order to achieve the things that I thought I wanted. And I thought I had that figured out. And I remember, constantly having this lack of peace in my life for a myriad of different reasons. And we're not here to like psychology 101 on Tiana, but the true core of the lack of peace in my life was that I was not living a life consistent with my values, because my values were not in the job title that I had, and not in how much money I made. My values were in how much value I brought into people's lives. That's who I am. I love, like literally, it excites me. It ignites me. It empowers me to help people. That is just my personality. Your personality is probably different than that. And there's nothing wrong. I have friends, for example, I have one friend who we worked on a project together, and him and I are night and day different. He is so detail oriented. I love it. It's amazing. When we work together, there were times when, because I'm so hyperactive and he's so calm and focused. He would like literally reach over and he would just put his hand on top of my hand that's just tapping on the table. And he'd be like, take a deep breath, slow down and focus. And I was like, was I being that unattentive? And I'm such a macro person and he was such a micro person. And I learned through that time that we worked together to appreciate how differently he thought and how his way of contributing was so much different than mine. And so I want to say this to say, don't let my personality type influence you. In other words, you have a unique thing that makes you you. And as I'm telling you this story, I don't want to make it sound like my way is better than your way. And that's the exact opposite of what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is you are unique. And the whole purpose of this podcast is to help introduce you to the principles that I've learned on how to become the most genuine and authentic version of myself. So that's really what I'm encouraging you to do here. And I realize that what makes me tick is people and being able to come alongside and inspire and help people. And that's why I do this podcast. I love to learn about life. I love to learn about these things and then share them with anybody who's willing to listen. And so it's interesting because as I first got it started, wow, that was going to be a beautiful sentence. As I first got started podcasting, I would look at the number of people that would listen to my podcast and I was like 10. Oh, and I'm on this podcast page on Facebook where we talk about things like, how do you monetize it? How do you get guests? All these different things. And it's just interesting to me to see how other people think about their podcasts. And somebody said, stop judging the number of people, the way that you think about, or let me rephrase that. Stop judging the number of people listening to your podcast the same way you think about the number of likes you get on social media. Instead, imagine that number of people sitting in a room listening to you talk. And when I think about how many downloads I get and how many people listen to this podcast, I'm humbled. I'm absolutely blown away by how many people have lent me their ear and given me their time. So that was a really long way of saying thank you, genuinely thank you. And thank you for taking the time to send me notes and messages, those of you that do. It really does motivate me because I do this for that reason. And so when I hear back from you and you say, thank you, Tiana, you entertained me at nothing, if nothing else, right? Or you did inspire me. You helped me to think about something in a new way. I like listening to your podcast. All of those I'm not doing it for accolades, but it helps me go, okay, I'm on the right track and I'm accomplishing my goal. Because again, I do this because I remember what it was like to be a prisoner of my own thought process, a prisoner of my own limitations. I've quoted this before, Jim Quick. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. And we create limitations all the time. We create limitations because we believe that that's how society tells us to do things, or because that's where we got our education, or because that's what our resume says, or because we don't think we can do a thing. We create limitations all the time. In fact, that is one of my favorite things as a coach is to point out like, hey, you're putting an unnecessary limitation on yourself right now. Stop. Like I was coaching somebody a while back and they were talking about their job, and this person is working an unhealthy amount of hours and has a very unhealthy work-life balance. And this has seeped into every aspect of their life. It's a young person too, which is just, I'm looking at this person going, what are you doing, kid? Like YOLO, you truly only get one life. And why are you wasting it? Being literally stressing all the time, now being physically sick, not sleeping, for what? Like for what? And as we peel back the layers and as this person and I work together, they came to realize that they believed that this was the only way forward, that they thought, well, this is just how you get ahead. And certainly hard work. Yes. And certainly, there are times that it requires you getting out of your comfort zone, but you shouldn't, it's unnecessary. Let me rephrase this. It's unnecessary to sacrifice your health to earn a paycheck. And I realize that makes a lot of people uncomfortable for me to say, one of the ways I see people become prisoners of their own belief system is when they believe that they have to do something they don't love and they have to make sacrifices that are so great just to get by, that it's just not true. The world is a really big place. And that is one of the biggest limitations that I have to help people push themselves through. And sure enough, after, months of working together, they've rethought their situation, and many of them are now repositioned in much happier places in life. And the biggest prison that they had to unlock was their mindset. I remember that. I just remember that. And that is what inspires me to stand behind this microphone, because I read a lot. I am constantly looking to find new truths, new principles in what's next. Growth is a journey, not a destination. And that's why I know I'll never run out of material for this podcast, because we're always just learning and growing. And I am so ambitious that I make fantastic mistakes. I have some great stories for you guys of there goes Tiana jumping off the cliff and she's not wearing a parachute. I'll tell you what it feels like when I hit the ground. That is kind of my MO. But that's why I do this. I do this because I want to inspire you. I want to share with you the things that I've learned to hopefully help you, maybe rethink something, maybe inspire you, maybe give you hope in something you haven't had hope in, hopefully make you laugh, entertain you a little bit, give you something to do on your drive to work or your walk around the neighborhood. If nothing else, give you somebody to poke fun at a little bit here and there. But that's really why I do that. And that's my intention. My intention is just to share with you my story, the things that I've learned from other really smart, people a lot smarter than me, and make you laugh, learn, and live big, right? And I just wanted to touch base with you guys on that. And that's my intention for this. So with that said, I'm going to do something I haven't done before. I'm going out on the edge here. You guys ready? You going to follow me? I'm not going to ask you to jump off a cliff with me, I promise. So today, I'm not going to open with somebody else's quote. I'm going to open with my own Tiana original thought quote. Like I said, it's getting wild and crazy in here. And the topic of today's podcast is going to be happiness, but happiness in the form of gratitude. I want to kind of focus on gratitude, the gratitude aspect of happiness, because happiness is a big, huge topic to tackle. So we're going to just kind of pick that one piece of happiness. And so here's a quote that I had to learn for myself. Again, School of Hard Knocks. I joke about this all the time. I say, I've got my master's degree from the School of Hard Knocks, and I was hoping to graduate before I got my PhD, but I'm so close to writing my dissertation that I may as well just stick it in there until I get my PhD from the School of Hard Knocks. But what the School of Hard Knocks has taught me is that happiness is not a set of circumstances. It is a decision. Happiness is not a set of circumstances. It is a decision. So let me ask you guys a question. Okay. Are you happy? Are you happy? Now, some of you may be thinking, define happy, Tiana, right? Because happiness can be a lot of things. Like, I'm at Disneyland. Yes, I'm happy. I just ate a hamburger. Yes, I'm happy. There's certainly the emotion of happiness, but then there's the truer, what I would call deeper meaning, the contentment, the grateful, that kind of deeply satisfying part of ourselves. Are you happy? Now, some of you may say, for the most part, yes, but there are some things in my life I don't like. That's fair. I get that. But let me ask you this. For those of you who said, yes, I'm happy. Okay, I have a question for you. What makes you happy, or why are you happy? Some of you may say things like, I have a great family. Amazing. Some of you may say things like, I have a great job. That's amazing. Some of you may say things like, I have money in the bank. That's great. Some of you may say things like, I get to do things that I love. Like, I live in a beautiful place. That's great. I could say all those things about myself, by the way. I have a wonderful family. I'm grateful that I have a wonderful job. I get to do things I love. Those are all wonderful things. Now I want to kind of flip the script. And for those of you who said, no, I'm not really happy, but I'm going to be happy when I finish school, or I'm going to be happy when I get this promotion, or I'm going to be happy when I go on vacation, or I'm going to be happy when I get into a relationship. All of us at some point in our life are guilty of being on either side of the equation. And guilty, I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean, just we have found ourselves on either side of that equation in some facet, right? And that's great. But here's where I'm going to pull a wicked twist on this topic. Would you still be happy if you lost your job? If everything in your bank account disappeared overnight? If you lost your home? If you lost a loved one? Now, I realize that I'm hitting some obviously very important things in life. And so the natural consequences, of course, I wouldn't be happy. I would be hurting. Yes, obviously in the temporary moment, but I'm talking about once you've recovered, once you've grieved, could you still be happy without these things is what I'm really asking. I'm not asking, of course, nobody's happy in the temporary transitionary period, but after that, could you still be happy if you didn't have all the things that you listed as being why you're happy? And for those of you who said, no, I'm not happy until I get these things, my question for you is, why do you believe those things are going to be what makes you happy? The reason that I wanted to talk about this and surface this conversation is because I've come to find in a world where we are constantly bombarded with marketing, we are told over and over again, if you just have this thing, if you just do this, if you just become this, then you're going to be happy. That is the underlying concept of most advertisement to us. Like that's how they get our attention because we're wired to want peace and joy and happiness in our lives. Like that's how we're hardwired as human beings. And so we're constantly bombarded with this message that if you just, then you will be happy. But what I have learned and what I have come to realize is that the minute that I depend on something else or a circumstance in my life to make me happy, I'm not truly happy. I enjoy that thing, but I am not happy. I am depending on something else for my happiness. You see, that's why I go back to saying happiness is a decision and not a set of circumstances. Because here's the one guarantee in life. Well, there's many guarantees, but here's one really critical guarantee in life. Change is inevitable. Change is always going to happen. Everything that you listed off to me right now that you said is going to make you happy is going to change in some form or fashion. Your relationships will change. Your home will evolve. Your bank account will evolve. It's all going to change. Some of it will change in a good direction. Some of it will change in a bad direction. We live in a world that is very random at times, unknown. Nobody really can truly see the future and understand it. I mean, I'm a Christian and I know how the end of the book goes, but the thing is, even with Bible prophecy, you never know exactly how that prophecy is going to manifest itself. You get in really dangerous water when you say, this is exactly how it's going to be. Be careful. I could tell you a story about what happens when people think things are going to be a certain way and they aren't. They yell, crucify him. It's a little inside joke for Christians there, but all kidding aside, everything in your life is guaranteed to change in some form or fashion. We live in a world that evolves. Time moves. So if you place your happiness in things, and if you place your happiness in circumstances, then you're going to, at some point in time, find yourself unhappy because the source of that happiness was based on things you truly had no control over. See, John Maxwell says it this way. He says, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% what you choose to do about it. So happiness has to be something you choose to generate within yourself. And I'm not trying to be all, I don't know what the right way of saying this is. I'm not trying to be like, just get in tune with nature and everything's going to be great. No, life is real. Crap happens. Pain is real. I'm not trying to negate any of those things, but what I am trying to say is that the most solid form of happiness in your life is one that you create because of the mindset that you choose and not because of the circumstances in your life. That doesn't mean that at times you won't feel sadness. That doesn't mean at times that you won't feel emotions that are contradictory to happiness. But that does mean that you get to make a decision if you're going to place your ability to be happiness on circumstances or things or people outside of your control, or if you're going to decide that you are in control of that. And that's why I wanted to talk about gratitude, because one of the best ways to truly be a happy person is to be a grateful person. I saw this quote from a website called thepositivemom.com, and it said, "It is not happiness that makes us grateful. It is gratitude that makes us happy." So all that intro was my long-winded way of saying, if I asked you what made you happy or why you're happy, and you listed all of these external things, and it didn't come from a place of genuine gratitude, then your happiness is kind of like a house of cards. And I'm not saying it's not real, but what I'm saying is there a better way? Is there a less fragile way to be a content, a whole, happy person without allowing life circumstances, which are going to be constantly changing around you, to impact your happiness? Now, I'm not going to lie. If some of the things that we just listed were to happen to me, and there are going to be things in my life that will happen. I'm going to hurt. I'm going to have pain. I'm going to be sad, just like you would be. But it's always in those moments in time when I've had some really low lows, and I've had some really low lows in my life. I've had to learn how to be grateful for what I do have and retrain my brain. So let's talk about this a little bit, and then we'll talk about how to practice gratitude in your life. I am not a psychologist. I'm not a neural scientist, but I mean, shocking. Just in case you didn't know, newsflash, I'm not a psychologist or a neuroscientist. I'm sure that this is totally blowing your minds right now. But I have read a lot of books that touch on the topic. So, I mean, like in beginner, I'm like beginner one, level one. Okay. So I have a basic understanding of neural anatomy, neuroscience, psychology, because it's in a lot of the books that I read. And what I've learned about the brain, it's really fascinating. And I learned this first from Darren Hardy in his book, The Compound Effect. And he talks about the power of practicing gratitude and how he makes a list of things that he's grateful for his wife. And that helps him to just constantly stay in a state of gratitude towards his wife. He appreciates her. He loves her. Now you're probably saying, but Tiana, you just said that relationship shouldn't. So to be clear about what I was saying earlier is, you choose to appreciate what you have, but it doesn't dictate your happiness. There's a difference, right? One is a choice of appreciation. Another one is a dependence on something to be happy. So anyway, so Darren Hardy talks about his practice of gratitude in this book. And so that was kind of the first place that I started to understand the power. And so then as I read more in different books, like Marie Forleo's Everything is Figureoutable, Greg McKeown's Essentialism, what you begin to learn, even Cal Newport's Deep Work, and I'm just referencing books that had information about neuroscience and how our brains work. What you understand, and Jordan Peterson, I talk about this quote all the time, what you aim at is what you'll see. What you understand about the brain is you have what's called your reticular activation system. And I've talked about this before. This is the part of your brain that filters information for you. So you know what to bring forward to your conscious mind and what just kind of goes into your subconscious as you're functioning through your day, right? By having a gratitude practice like Darren Hardy was talking about, you train your reticular activation system to look for the things that you're grateful for. What you aim at is what you'll see. And so if you want to be a grateful, happy person, by having a gratitude practice and by bringing this forefront into your mind and learning to see the things in your life that you are grateful for, rather than what you don't have or rather than what you wish would change, what you do is you train your brain to automatically be in a happier, more grateful state. You train your reticular activation system. And then by doing this, you create new neural pathways in your brain. This becomes the normal way of thinking. You know, it's really interesting because as a coach, I talk to a lot of people and they're like, well, this is just how I am. And as a coach, I'm always listening to those stories we're telling ourselves, right? And I'm like, I love when I hear that this is just how I am, because that for me is like, all right, stop. Does that mean that's how you have to be the rest of your life? And the answer to that is no. You actually have a lot of power to change the way you think. Yes, you have neural pathways deeply entrenched in your brain that are accustomed to thinking along that thought process. But with practice and time, you can change the way that your brain thinks about things. So this is my long-winded way of saying that if you are a person, you know, I love how people say, I'm an optimist, I'm a pessimist, I'm a realist. All three of those are just mindsets that you choose to have. That's it. It's just a mindset that you choose. You choose your beliefs. And you choose to believe, I am an optimist, I am a pessimist, or I am a realist. The same is true for how you choose to think about the circumstances in your life. So as I've mentioned, you know, all my reading, I've learned things like how to refocus your reticular activation system, how your brain typically works through ingrained neural pathways. And so if you're used to always seeing things a certain way, your brain's going to default to that. But by refocusing how you want to think about things and retraining your brain and becoming aware of the narrative and rewriting it with something that is usually more true, by the way, I have found that many times the narratives we're telling ourselves are not always rooted in truth. They're formed either out of a place of fear or this is what we've always taught. It's the path of least resistance. You can retrain that. When you decide to say, okay, I'm not going to be dependent on anything in my life for happiness, for peace. Instead, I'm now going to choose gratitude and recognize that these things can bring me joy. These things can be a part of what makes me happy. But my happiness is because I'm choosing to be present in the moment, because I'm choosing to enjoy these things in my life, but they don't make me happy. My decision to be grateful for them is what makes me happy. Notice just the subtle difference. So by choosing a gratitude mindset, you rewire your brain. So what happens? What are some of the benefits, I guess I should say, of rewiring your brain? Well, that is a great question. I am so glad you asked. So first of all, when you choose to have a gratitude practice and choose to think about things through the lens of gratitude instead of what you don't have, or instead of if I lost this, I wouldn't be happy anymore, but rather just go through day with the lens of gratitude, you naturally stop living in a negative headspace. How many of you listening right now find yourself constantly in a negative headspace? Maybe it's depression of some sort. Maybe it's anxiety. Maybe it's fear of, well, what happens if this, or what happens if that, or what happens if this, or you're driving and somebody cuts you off. That jerk, they cut me off, and blah, blah, blah. How many of you have negative messages of some sort? Or you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, and so you beat yourself up every time you put something in your mouth. Or I didn't exercise today, I'm such a loser. How many of you live in some sort of negative headspace? When you choose to refocus on gratitude, negativity doesn't have any room in your mindset anymore. And I realize I'm painting with a very broad brush, but I'm going to continue to articulate what I mean with a little bit more detail in just a minute. But by retraining your brain to come from a place of gratitude, you have less room and less space for negativity. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean when you have less room and less space for negativity? Well, obviously you'd be happier, right? Because you're not walking around with this constant negative energy and frustration and anxiety and all of the things that negativity creates. But here's the other thing. Happy, positive people don't want to be around negative people. And you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So you are incapable of attracting people who will bring better things into your life when you are living in a negative headspace. Not only are you not enjoying what you have, you're not happy, but you're also not going to create an environment where you can attract healthier, happier people in your life. So you create a better environment for yourself naturally, and a happier, more peaceful place that you operate from. Your stress levels will go down, because many times stress is just a symptom. Remember, stress is a symptom of something else going on. Many times stress is directly rooted in the fact that you are allowing a negative space in your life. And not always. I mean, sometimes stress has to be, sometimes it's not, I've got, for example, a family member right now going through some really terrible health issues. And this is a stressful situation. And I'm not going to stand here and look at this person and say, you just need to have a better mindset about this. While that is 100% true. And there is a ton of science to show that your mindset about your healing has a huge impact on how you heal. It's okay for me to acknowledge you are in a really, you have a lot of health issues before you. And you have a hard road ahead of you. But if you approach this with a happy, optimistic, grateful perspective, that you caught this disease when you did, that you have a great team of doctors working with you, that you've got a family surrounding you that's going to help you get through this, that you've got friends that love you that are by your side, and that we're going to walk with you every step. And if you choose to focus on the grateful things, this person's healing process, as painful as it's going to be, will be better than if I'm going to die, I might die. I can't believe this is happening to me. Do you see the difference? You're most likely going to sleep better. How many of you have ever woken up in the middle of the night with anxiety because you're thinking about the thing at work? Allowing yourself space to let go of negativity, which again is just kind of an aspect of what we're talking about here, will not only improve your overall happiness, which is kind of what we're talking about here, but it will improve your ability to compartmentalize and let things go and not stress out about things you can't control. Here's the other thing that's really interesting about gratitude. You're going to have more self-esteem, more confidence. Why? Because rather than walking through life with these mindsets, now, and some of these may resonate with you and some of them may not. I try to cast a broad net because everybody's different, right? But if you walk around thinking, what if that person doesn't like me? What if this, what if that, what if this goes wrong? What if that, I don't like this. If you're constantly walking around with that mindset, your self-esteem and your confidence is not going to be there. It's not going to be what it should be for you to live as the most genuine and authentic version of yourself. So gratitude rewires your brain. It creates less space for negativity in your life, and in some cases eliminates it, depending upon what areas of negativity you deal with. It should help reduce your stress, because stress is a symptom of something else. It will help you sleep better. It will help you attract better, healthier people in your life, and you'll have more self-esteem and more confidence. So these are just some of the reasons why being a person of gratitude is really important. So how can you become a person that has more gratitude in your life? Well, thank you for asking. That's a great question. The way that I practice gratitude in my life is every day, in the morning and in the evening, I sit down and I write down 5 small things that I'm grateful for. And they're not like, I can't write like my husband. Yes, I am grateful for my husband. He got up and took care of the dog 4 times last night. Okay. That's a miracle man right there. So yes, I am. But what I'm really grateful for is that he got up and took care of the dog 4 times last night. I'm grateful for the fact that this morning I got the best picture of the sunrise and these beautiful flowers off the side of the road. And it was just breathtaking. I'm grateful for the fact that the sun is out and I've gotten to see the sun today. And I know that sounds crazy, but we have like literally had no sun for the past 5 days. And I have a codependent relationship with the sun. I love the sun. I am grateful for the ham and cheese sandwich I had for lunch. It was perfect. It was so good. Okay. And these things are not insignificant. And I'll tell you why. Because by thinking about these things in the morning and thinking about these things in the evening, I'm retraining my brain. I'm rewiring my brain. I'm rewiring my brain to see the good in a circumstance rather than see the bad. That doesn't mean that I don't confront the brutal facts. Jim Collins, Good to Great. I do. I confront the brutal facts of my life all the time. That's part of life. But when I confront the brutal facts of my life from a position of gratitude rather than from a position of fear, I am much better equipped to solve the problems that I have in front of me. Because when it comes to solving problems, what you're trying to do is get to the root cause and not treat the symptoms. And I want to do a podcast about problem solving at some point in time because that's really important. There's some really great tips on ways to think about problem solving in our lives. And so I confront the brutal facts in my life, confront the brutal reality. That's a chapter from Jim Collins' Good to Great. So I'm not a blind optimist, but I am a hopeful person because of the gratitude I have in my life. Also, as a person of faith, because I do believe in the living God and the creator of the universe, with my mindset of gratitude, I see his miracles in my life all around me. I see his provision. You know, the entire book of Psalms almost is David saying, God is wonderful. God is great. God has done all these wonderful things. And I know a lot of Christians who go through life and say, God has never done anything wonderful for me. And I'm like, yeah, he actually has. You've just never paid attention. You've never trained yourself to see those things. And because I believe that the God of the Bible is the same God yesterday, today, and tomorrow, that he wants the same things for me that he put in the Bible for other people, I can see those things. I can see the evidence of his goodness all over my life. And yes, that's a worship song, but yes, that's true. You have so many good things in your life. It doesn't matter how bad your circumstances are right now or how bad you may feel about things or how hopeless your circumstances may seem. There's always hope. There's always hope. And you're going to find that hope by starting from a place of saying, I'm not going to let external circumstances dictate my happiness. Happiness is a decision. It's not a set of circumstances. And I am going to foster gratitude so I can begin to see the hope that has given me this gratitude, like these things, right? They're all kind of interrelated. So my practice of gratitude is really that simple. Writing down 5 things in the morning that are small, that are detailed, that I'm paying attention to the details, that forces my brain to see the details. That's why I'm not saying there's anything wrong with saying I'm grateful for my job and I'm grateful for this. But when you say, what about your job you're grateful for? On that particular day, you're training your brain to focus on the small details. It's really powerful what will happen when you train your brain. It really is. I know it's sometimes because I like to play around and it's hard to take me seriously, but I'm being 100% serious right now. You can retrain your brain by deciding in this moment to be a person that practices gratitude from this moment on going forward. You're going to have some tough situations you have to deal with. And there are going to be some really things that it feels like there's no silver lining in that. There's nothing to be grateful about that situation. But you'd be surprised when you decide to try to find the reason, the gratitude in each moment, what you just didn't realize was there all along because you never thought to look for it. So to kind of summarize what I was saying, what you aim at is what you'll see. If you aim to be grateful for the things in your life, you will see the reasons to be grateful for the things in your life. If you are constantly aiming as a negative person, all you will see is negativity in your life. If you aim to be happy because of life circumstances, you will only see things in your life that will make you happy or the things that you don't have, which is why you're not happy. But if you refocus your aim to say, I can be happy no matter where I am or what I'm doing because it's a decision that I make, then you can truly be free from not sadness ever, not disappointment ever. Those things are going to happen, but from having those things control your life. You are in control of your life. It's like this, and I've said this before. Emotions make great servants, but terrible masters. By choosing a life of gratitude, you get to say that the sadness and the disappointing things in your life don't get to be your master. You're still in control of that circumstance, even if you're still in control of your response, I should say, even if the conditions or some of the circumstantial things are not in your control. The one guarantee in life is change. There are going to be things outside of your control the rest of your life. I think as a former control freak and in some ways still a control freak, a recovering control freak, I can tell you I used to believe that the more control I had, the happier I was going to be. Again, circumstantial happiness. And then I came to realize that Control was always just an illusion. Right? Control is an illusion. Let's just be honest, okay? Control is an illusion. I was choosing in that time, in those moments, how I was going to respond to those things. So I want to encourage you, if you don't have a practice of gratitude, get a small notebook and every morning and every evening write down the things you're grateful for, those small little moments in life. And the more that you do that, and the more often that you see that in your life, and the more that you retrain your brain to be a grateful person, you will find less and less negativity. And all those things that I just mentioned, I'm not saying that this is the magic bullet or the silver bullet or the magic pill that's going to solve all of your problems. No, but I'm saying that this is a big step in that direction. Because becoming aware of how you think and how you're perceiving the environment around you is a big step in beginning to determine, is the mindset and are my beliefs real and true? And should I be thinking about the things the way that I do? Most of us are so oblivious to our own internal thought process and our own belief system. That's the power of being a coach, is that I'm just reflecting back to people what they're telling me they believe. And when you hear somebody say the same thing you just said, but with different words, and it's not your same message. And I remember the first time my coach did that for me. He said, "So what you're telling me is da 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 da," and I was like, "That is exactly what I was thinking. And that's really stupid when you say it." Right? Like, I can't believe that I was living with that lie. It's so true though. Like, and I remember just sitting there being like, I can't believe I just said that out loud. But that's the power of coaching, is it gets you out of your own head and lets you see, I can't believe that I've actually been thinking that about myself, but it's just said in slightly different words from a different person. And it really refocuses your perspective. So my hope for you and my encouragement for you, the place I'm inviting you into, is a place where you don't allow circumstances to dictate your happiness any longer. You decide that, all right, I can't always control circumstances, and I'm not always going to be happy. There are going to be things in life that make you sad. There are going to be things in life that make you angry, but you can control how you respond to that. And you can control how those emotions impact you. You can control your mindset about the circumstances you're in. And I invite you to become a person that practices gratitude every day. It's interesting because last year during COVID, I like to walk a lot and I live in the country. And so it's just amazing. Cows and deer and turkeys. And there were a bunch of vultures. There was like 15 vultures sitting out eating a dead fish the other day. But they were cool. It was so cool to see them all. And horses and goats. It's amazing. Flowers and trees and things of that nature. And so I got into the habit of just taking pictures of flowers that I had walked by my whole life, because maybe they're microscopically small, or they're a weed on the side of the road, or whatever. It's spring and there's flowers everywhere. And as I refocus my mind to look for those flowers, I now see some of the most incredible flowers that I was blind to until I refocused my brain to just look for flowers. And so all spring and summer last year, I took pictures of flowers. And I started again this year, and I found flowers I didn't even see last year because I'm starting earlier this year than last year. So things bloom at different times. And the positive feedback I get from these flower pictures, it's funny. And I'm like, people are like, wow, where you live is so beautiful. I'm like, I just took that on the side of the road, like with my iPhone. Okay. But my point is this: by simply sharing a little bit of my perspective of the world, it's amazing how many people are inspired by that. Right. And so one of the other big benefits to gratitude is you can inspire the world around you. By learning to be a person of gratitude, you bring more joy and happiness into this world. So take the time to write down those 5 small things and start asking yourself the question when you're in a tough situation and you're trying to figure out the solution. Before you look at the problem, and before you allow all of the thought process to occur, stop and ask yourself, what about the circumstance or the situation can I be grateful for? Now, I had one of those this morning. I was, I'm so embarrassed to say this. I, first of all, was trying to do something complex before the sun had come up. So mistake number one, but I was simply transferring. I have a little bit of money in cryptos. I'm not one of these people who was smart enough to put a bunch of money in cryptocurrency. I know somebody who literally invested $5,000 in cryptocurrency several years ago and now has tens of thousands of dollars. So I'm not that person. Okay. I put a few $100 in cryptocurrency a few years ago, and I was trying to move it from one platform to the other. And it's a very easy process, but it's a very detail oriented process. If you miss one step in this process, or you do one thing wrong, your cryptocurrency is gone, just gone, because it's a blockchain technology. So there is no bank you can call and say, hey, about that money that I just transferred, it's gone. Like, it's just gone. So it's been kind of fun having this little tiny pocket of cash in cryptocurrency. So this morning I decided to move it from one platform to the other, and I made a mistake. I transferred from one kind of cryptocurrency to a different kind. So I got the letters mixed up early in the morning. I'm going to blame it on that. I knew better. I know that my brain is not firing on all 2.5 cylinders at 6 o'clock in the morning, the week of time change. So I transferred it, and poof, it was gone. All of my money gone. And when I realized it, I was like, what? Okay. So yeah, I mean, like, what in the world is there possibly to be grateful for in that particular situation? Okay. So after I woke up a little bit more and I had Tiana reflecting time, what's my lessons learned? Here's the gratitude that I came out of that situation with. First of all, that I learned something, right? I learned that when I know that it's not a good time to do something, don't do it. As Dave Ramsey says, you have enough new mistakes to make. Don't make the same mistake twice. So Tiana, stop. When it's not like, you don't have to do everything at 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Sit down and have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea first. I realized how grateful I was that even though it's gone now, I made a small investment and it grew into something very large. So if I've done it once, I can do it again. Right. So I now know the process of growing something. And I now know the process of that very particular function that I will never make that mistake again, hopefully. So even though there was not a whole lot of anything positive to come out of that situation, there were things I could still be grateful for. I know it's kind of a random, arbitrary, and it's a small. Listen, I realize that some of the situations that you're dealing with are not as small and minute as just magically watching money disappear. But there are still ways to be grateful. Find those reasons to be grateful. Become the person that you want to be around by changing how you see the world. Because you can do that. And go inspire other people to do the same. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. And I really do appreciate you guys. As I said earlier, just imagining all of us sitting together in a room together, it's humbling, it's inspiring, it's encouraging. And I hope that everything that we share together on this podcast, you're out learning, making your own, taking your own modifications and revisions from it, and inspiring other people to do the same. Together, we can make the world a really amazing place. So thank you guys. Have a great one, and I'll check in with you in a couple of weeks. Thank you for tuning in. For additional content, including my blog and social media, see my website, tianashoey.com. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe, leave a review, and be sure to tell your friends and family, anyone else that you think might enjoy joining us on this journey. Until next time.